going. It's going. My social sculptor, art contrarian, everybody. You're Wonder Woman, right?
Woo.
How's it going? Are you okay?
Yeah, it's pretty good for me, frankly.
Okay.
Yeah, I got this grant a couple months ago, and so I've been able to just keep going with all my projects. So it's been really good. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know
Oh,
you're busy, so I'll
yeah.
get ready to start the show. So,
Oh, yeah.
welcome to God and Matter. My name is Arlene J.M. Grant. I'm your host, and today's guest is Philippa Hughes. Philippa is Wonder Woman in disguise, I think. We share a common love for Wonder Woman, and she's a social sculptor. She has so many different things she's doing. She's looking for America at dinner table. She's coordinating art. She's connecting people. She is. Are you still a lawyer officially?
Oh gosh, no. I haven't done that in ages.
Okay, well, I didn't know if
I'll
you were
never
still,
go back.
yeah, I didn't know if you were still admitted somewhere as
No.
a lawyer. Yeah, so she's a recovered lawyer and artist. And it's interesting because when I first met you, it was because I was the lawyer turned artist as well. I never gave up my Esquire. I still have it, and I actually use it now to do like volunteer work. I'm doing an immigration case,
Oh,
and
cool.
grassroots to help people like with the protests and civil rights and social justice. But other than that, I don't really have like a practice, so I respect it. So, Philippa, I said a lot about who I think you are and admire who you are. You have a podcast, you have so much that you're doing. It's amazing. You coordinate with this gift of bringing people together and telling stories. So, who are you in your own words?
Thank you for asking. It's a hard question. It's harder to answer than I thought that question. That sounds like a simple question because, you said all those things and I'm actually trying, I have so many different interests and that's why I do all these different things, but I really am trying to narrow my focus, at least for the next year, because I do feel extremely mission driven right now and I don't want anything to distract me. So I'm actually not doing the podcast right now. I'm not doing anything unless it fits the mission to save democracy.
That's an important mission.
Yeah.
The Washington Post said democracy dies in the dark.
Yeah.
They weren't kidding. So what is this mission that you're doing?
Well, I speak in these lofty terms. I'm trying to save democracy. I don't know how to do that. What I do know is, as you said, I know how to bring people together. I know how to organize spaces for people to have conversations that can include people who are very different from each other and who might not normally meet. And in fact, I was thinking about, I can't tell you how many times people have said, if I invite them over, they're like, wow, that was a weird, random person that you introduced me to. I'm like, I know, I just met that person, and I was in this bar one night and just seemed really interesting, so I'll invite anybody over. And because you just never know. And not just that you just never know, but there's so many people that have so many interesting things to add to this conversation. And when I say this conversation, I'm thinking not just about a political conversation, but a human conversation. What does it mean to be human? This project that I'm working on right now is called Looking for America. And we ask, what does it mean to be American? But at the end of the day, what I really care about is, what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to relate to each other?
That is the key. When you say that you have people and you're asking them what it means to be American, what kind of responses are you getting? Because you're going all over the place. You're going into some places that don't necessarily embrace diversity from our common understanding. So what does that look like for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, on the surface, they seem very not diverse communities, but I will say I have been very surprised at how diverse these places have been. They're not like anything what we could call diverse, but more than what I thought. Anyway, so So I think it's what's interesting for me has been to think about how all the different ways we can be American. There was a book a couple years ago, or within the last couple years, the title of which I cannot remember right now, but basically the thesis of this book is that essentially 11 different countries within our one big country, and at like 11 different cultures. And I thought that was so interesting, and I totally believe that that is true. But we're all Americans, and so we do have to figure out how to be all American, under this one society. But you're absolutely right. Like, what it means to be American in Salt Lake City is very different from what it means to be American here. And yet here we are. We have to figure out how to coexist. So that's what I'm kind of interested in. Like, I think it's awesome that we have all these differences. I love it, but it's also contributing to our divisiveness.
It's true. I do love diversity. And, I spend a lot of time traveling, as do you. And I've gone a lot outside the country to different places. And then I made this conscious decision through my camera to go across the US. So I flew to Chicago and then I drove to Idaho. And you probably know what that's like. That is very different. And I walked into some places and the reception, there was so many varying receptions. And I even went to Salt Lake City, which is really beautiful when you go to the Great Salt and see all of those things. But I'm looking now at what's happening in this country. They were protesting in Salt Lake City. So when you say that we're different, it's true that we're also alike, as you said. And that gives me hope.
Totally. In fact, so the reason why I've been so busy this week, and I was very remiss in answering your emails, is because, okay, so let me back up to tell you. So this Looking for America project was where I was organizing these dinners and art shows around the country, exploring this question of being, what does it mean to be American?
Blueberries and cherries, right?
Well, it originally started off, I called it blueberries and cherries because that's when I was inviting people to my house for dinner and I would make them dinner. And that was not really meant to be a project. It's just my exploration. And then I got funding. And so it turned into this bigger national project called Looking for America. And in fact, it's the original funder is and we're still partnered, is an organization that does immigration policy. So we'll have to chat about that. Yeah. So anyway, so that's why we came up with this question of what does it mean to be American? Having immigrants and non-immigrants, even though we're all immigrants, answer that question. And so we were gonna, of course, we did that all through 2019, and then we wanted to continue it. And of course we couldn't gather, we couldn't travel. And so I've been organizing these Zoom conversations. So this whole week I went crazy and organized 10 Zoom conversations.
Oh my gosh.
With people from all the places that we had gone to from during that project to continue these conversations we started last year. And it was amazing. And anyway, so all that is to say, I want to tell you more about that, but also that's how I learned that, like, in Salt Lake City, there were like some pretty intense riots there. The guy we talked to from there said that like a police car was a car was burned, and there was actually some graffiti, and I was like, in Salt Lake City,
Right?
like that happened? Like, I was shocked. I thought they were just so nice and follow all the rules. So anyway, to your point, like, yeah, people like in some weird way, like maybe this really is a moment that is unifying beyond any other moment we've ever had.
It is amazing to watch. I actually, before we started today, I was watching some foreign news, and I don't own a TV. I usually
Me neither.
Really?
I haven't had one since 1999.
I haven't had one since probably that time too.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Last TV I bought was a gift from my dad, but no, I'm TV-less.
Yeah.
It's funny. You talk about energy drawing you to people, and I'm like, that's so cool. So I read or I watch on my phone most times things, and the news is amazing. It looks like war is happening out there that we don't see in the U.S. Watered down version. I was looking through, and there's a journalist. He's part of a class action now through the ACLU against the state of Minnesota for his injury. He was shot like in the face.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you say? Because you're like a journalist, in many ways through Looking for America. What do you say to that kind of stuff? What do you say with your voice exercising change? Because what you're doing is powerful.
Mm-hmm. This week has felt very powerful to me. So I had organized all these Zooms a while ago. And then as I got closer to it and all the once George Floyd was murdered and then all the protests started, I was really upset that I haven't been able to participate in the protests as much as I normally would have. So I'm like, I gotta do, I have these commitments. And I thought about maybe putting them off to later. And then I realized this has been the most amazing platform to talk about those issues that are coming up now. Like, I organized it so I get to pick what the topics are. So I bring it up every single time. Like, originally we would have talked about some immigration stuff, questions around freedom and liberty, which actually are very applicable right now. But I get to bring it up every time. And so I've been able to bring up this questions around, what does it mean to be an anti-racist? What does it mean when our government turns its military against its citizens who are protesting? I get to, I feel very powerful right now in being able to ask those questions.
An excuse, I have a thunderstorm going.
I know.
Lightning.
Okay. I'm hearing it now too. Oh my gosh. It's about to pour.
So wow.
That's kind of cool. I like that sound, actually.
I like it too. But also what's interesting to me is that we just had a protest. I live near a park and a church. And the park, I just heard protesters. Shortly before. So it's kind of interesting to me. Maybe they summoned up this energy that there's some cleansing of the earth. Who knows? I hope so. But how does that power feel to you that you're making this change?
Yeah, I hadn't anticipated it. So it just finished. I just had the last one this morning, and I started listening back through all of them because I have to do time stamping on it for our editor. And that today actually was the day when I realized that I had this massive power, and I had been annoyed that it was taking away time from doing real action. But I realized, no, this is my action. That, if I'm contributing to changing systems, this is how I'm contributing to it. And so I'm just really feeling so energized by the possibilities of, because, that's the thing. So I was like, as we know, I looked through my Facebook feed and my social media, and all I see is all the people agreeing with exactly what I believe. And we know that, right? And so a few times when I brought up, what does it mean to be an anti-racist on some of these calls, people had literally never even heard that term. Not that they'd heard it and had dismissed it. They never even heard it. So what does that mean? And then I had a chance to explain how I understand it. I'm like, I don't know, I'm not an expert, but here's what I know. And I'm really trying to learn, and maybe you should too, So, oh my gosh. So just so many different things in that. One, I get to bring it up and I get to force people to at least consider it, but also I'm learning along with them. And it's just underscoring for me, to have a little bit more compassion for people. They don't know. They literally get different information than we do. And I know that intellectually, but this really brought it home for me. And it's sort of if I have the opportunity to help them see a different side, I'm not trying to persuade anybody. I always say that. But if I have an opportunity to bring up some information that they might not have ever known, that's pretty powerful.
That is powerful. And you bring up a really good point. And like I was saying, looking at the foreign news today, I was like, I didn't know. I mean, I watched people with their own riot protection gear with the police firing at them. And I was like, wait a minute, what? Because I had a friend from New Zealand write me. He's like, are you okay? What's going on? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I know there's some protesting, but he's like, oh, no. And now I see. And they're also protesting in New Zealand.
Yeah. I mean, I do want to be careful about that because certainly they are getting a slim, they're not getting all the news either. So I also want to be careful about it. The thing that I've been very excited about is that there have been protests in other countries as well. That's why it feels like it's different this time. It's not just a few people marching in the streets. People around if we were in the middle of a pandemic, I just think the streets would be filled with people right now. Filled, really, truly filled.
I have another thought on that. And I think the pandemic kind of cleared the path for this moment.
Actually, I think you're right.
People have had a lot of time on their hands to think about things. People have been denied in many ways their rights by this pandemic, right? They've been shuttered. They want to go to the mall, they can't go to the mall. They want to go to the restaurant, they can't go to the restaurant. So now they see a man who wants to breathe and he cannot breathe. It is incensing to watch what happened. I normally don't watch those videos. I might just see the news, but there was something inside me that said, you have to watch it. And when I watched it, I was just silenced. I couldn't talk. Like, I haven't really talked about it on social media. I might share other people's posts, but I can't really fully put my words in place. On the podcast, I've done some little edits to say something, but I can't properly address it yet because it's so shocking. It's so alarming. So I do the little parts, then I signed up with the Grassroots Law Project. You know, I call and say, arrest these people. But I feel like there's still more, so I'm figuring out what that looks like. But when you have a platform, there's responsibility. So thank you for exercising your responsibility. 10 in a week is a lot.
A lot. I will say it was a lot. It was a little ambitious.
But you did it.
Yeah. You know, it is interesting. Yes. It is interesting because you're right. Like, it was so shocking. And I don't think people are lying about this. Nobody can watch that video and have any other reaction than that man must be put in jail for what he did. You know, it's no person in their right mind could look at that. And so in these conversations, we all agree that that was a very bad thing. There's no excuse. You know, where it starts diverging when we talk about, you know, racism and anti-racism is like, then they're like, well, that was a bad cop. The system is fine. And I'm like, is it? You know, is it really? So it is kind of interesting that we can all agree that that was a horrific thing. And then once we start digging, that's when we start diverging. And that's where I really have been trying to like push a little bit more. I don't have to convince anybody that that was a terrible thing to happen. So anyway, it's kind of an interesting little nuance to that.
Yeah, that's true. So Philippa, what made you decide to do this work? Like, why this?
Well, I mean, as you know, I've always loved bringing people together. Like, I've always had people coming to my home and I've always organizing things. So that comes very naturally to me. But I think that, like many people of my ilk, of my liberally ilk, and I used air quotes there, the 2016 election was this like just this wake up call of like, what's happening? It was a wake-up call. I mean, my reaction to it was not to curl up into a fetal position like many of my friends. Like, I was like, I have to figure out what's happening. I need to know why this happened and what I can do about it. So it was more of a reaction, a very reactionary thing. And I did the thing that I'm really good at. I invite people over. So that's how it started. And it didn't start as a project. It just started as, I've got to understand, I've got to ask questions. So that's how it began, but I kept doing it over and over. And then it became like a project.
So from your understanding, and I'm assuming that you've changed. I can't understand how you could do it without changing. How has this experience changed you from 2016 to now in 2020?
I will say that I think I'm probably, I'm probably built to accept different opinions more than others like me. You know, like, I have a lot of friends. Oh my gosh, the meanest messages I got when I started saying that I was inviting Trump voters over to my house for dinner were from uber liberal people, like really mean messages. I was like, whoa. And so I think that I already have a sort of a natural inclination to be able to invite diversity of opinion, but I think that I still wasn't really, I'm still working on this too. I have to really prepare myself to have these conversations because I feel the rage, you know, rising out of me. So incrementally, I've gotten better over the last 3 years of having these conversations. I'm not great at it yet. I'm a lot better. So that is a big change. So then that gives me more compassion for people who are not having these conversations and how difficult it is. I've been doing it for 3 years and I'm still like not great at it. So having one conversation with somebody isn't going to be enough. And so I'm trying to be better about saying, okay, it's okay that you're still mad and angry because you haven't been doing it for 3 years. So I get it. And I just also want to be really clear. This is not about persuading or accepting that this position, any position that you feel is wrong is acceptable. It's just about like understanding why and how are we going to change the systems when we don't even understand what's happening. Well, we don't even have a full picture. So for me, that's a little bit of my subversive goal in this is like, what's that? The art of war says you must know the enemy. I mean, if you don't understand the other side, how can you possibly change anything? So that's a little bit of my goal in this too. But also, I'm sorry, I'm just going on and on. But also it's like, at the end of the day, those people aren't going away. Like, they're still going to be in our country. And there's a lot of them out there. Half of Americans like believe this, like have different beliefs than we do. So we're not getting rid of those people, and our government is meant to represent all people, not half the people. So, yeah, I feel very strongly about this.
You should, and I applaud you for also acting very strongly about it, because I can imagine the hate messages, especially, there are people I call the liberals because they can cancel themselves out in a way.
I'm like, oh my gosh. And it's ineffective, and it ends up being ineffective. Then what are you achieving at this point?
That's true. But I remember when you were starting, you asked me about a dinner, and I was just like, I don't know if I can do it. At that point, I mean, I am not blue, I am not red, I am purple. Okay. I am whatever resonates within. But it was really hard for me to digest people supporting him. And I know that there are people who felt disenfranchised who voted for him thinking that he was going to be their Messiah. And those people had a rude awakening. I'm not sure in the 4 years that he's delivered any promises. And I'm not trying to enter into a political discussion with you and pull you down that path. But I don't know how those people are feeling. And you're looking for America. Have you found people who supported him who now are looking for America themselves?
That's such a good question. I mean, it's so complicated. We could do a whole other podcast about this because it's just more complicated, because part of the problem is it's systems. Again, it's about our system, our binary system of you either have to vote this way or you have to vote that way, and we have nothing in between. That's like one issue. And so yes, there are cultural issues that are happening, like this urban-rural divide, the Christian evangelical versus the atheist, or less Christian. There's like all these different factors going in, and so I think that that's where the humanizing part comes in for me, is understanding like experience and lived experiences. But part of me takes a much more methodical view of it, and I think about, we can have these conversations and understand cultural differences, but we need to fix our systems. Our systems are broken. We need to fix Citizens United. We need to fix electoral college stuff. We need to fix things like earmarks in the way Congress works. We need to fix Congress. I think the president needs to have less power, things like that. Things that we can actually legislate. We can't legislate culture. We can only work with what we've got when it goes, be better, more understanding in that regard. So I'm very torn. There's like all these things that we have to work on from different directions.
Oh, what you said, I don't know if you realize how powerful that is. It's simple and it is incredibly powerful. You cannot legislate culture. So
I've never said that before. I'm like, that was pretty good.
That was really good. You cannot legislate culture, but information is power. So again, that's why I speak to the platform and I talk about journalism with you and those types of things, because that is what then creates what we see in our political process.
Mhm.
And so
That's
that's
right.
important. So with all of that, okay, so we know this about you. You bring people together for conversations. What inspires you? What keeps you going? How are you taking care of you? That's like 5 questions, but anyway.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I was gonna say that's like there's a multiple thing going on
Yeah,
there.
so we'll do steps and pieces.
Yeah, I mean, I sincerely mean it when I say what's inspiring me right now are the actual conversations I'm having with people across the country. And it's just some people just blow me away sometimes. I'm just like, wow, you could not be more different from my favorite example of a person I've met in the last year that like, I'm pretty sure that if I'd met you, before 2016, I would never have really wanted to talk to you, but this guy named Joe, who lives in Northwest Arkansas, this mutual acquaintance said, you should meet this guy. I'm like, okay, sounds interesting. He drove up to where we were going to meet, just classic truck with a gun rack and the cowboy hat, all the things. I'm like, oh boy, okay, I got to prepare myself. He's amazing. He's the founder of the annual Squirrel Cook-Off Festival in Bentonville, Arkansas. It's last year was its 11th year. 10,000 people show up for a squirrel cook-off. Teams of people come up with these recipes for squirrel. And they have judges. He asked me if I want to be a judge. I'm like, I've never even eaten squirrel. Should I really be a judge?
Did you do it?
Well, it was going to be this year, so.
Oh, this year. Oh, this year. Okay. Have you
He
eaten squirrel since that? I'm sorry. That was just
still
such a
never
good
eaten squirrel.
reaction.
And so I told him probably I should train my palate before I'm a judge. Anyway, he's told me we had this amazing long conversation, but at the end of the day, he wrote me this email after we talked and he said, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but he basically said, if we could just see how the same we are as humans, we could probably solve a lot of problems. And I was like, yeah, exactly. I don't know. It sounds pie in the sky, hokey pokey, whatever, this, Pollyanna. I'm like, I think that actually is how we're going to get through all of this ultimately.
It is. To me, it is to exercise love. And I think if you get people loving themselves,
Yes.
then they are going to be able to love others.
Oh, Arlene. Yes. I have so much to say on that. I mean, do you listen to Brene Brown much?
No, but her name keeps coming up in this podcast. And I've read a little bit from her, especially like when Brooke Baldwin got COVID, she was quoting her and then somebody else. I've been looking at little quotes, but continue.
Well, I think you should. But she has a podcast now, but she's written all these books and she's, the speaker. And I don't know, I will say I bristle sometimes against the woo-woo, I'm like, but she just really resonates with me. But she talks a lot about loving yourself first. There's no way to have these conversations without knowing yourself, not just even loving yourself, but knowing who you are and what you stand for, and then going out into the world and having these conversations. But the self-love part, oh man, that is something that I have been working on for my many years on earth. And I'm not where I want to be yet, but I really believe that if you cannot, you have to start with yourself. And I think that is part of the problem with a lot of the divisive rhetoric in the world is we're too outward looking and we haven't looked at ourselves first.
Yes. Yeah. I used to volunteer. My first year of law school, I came to Baltimore, and that's how I got tied to Baltimore. And I used to volunteer at this church, and they used to say, let there be peace and let it begin with me. They used to tell the little kids to settle them down. And I think that we need to take a look at that. And this opportunity of this time that we're in has given people time to look within if they wanted to take it.
Right.
If they wanted to take it. So with that, How is Philippa taking care of Philippa?
Oh, yeah, that's been tough. I'm not very good at that. I do too many things. I'm that person. Yep. Anyway, so I'm not very good at that. I, I will say though, okay, I do exercise a lot. So I do think that is a huge part of why I haven't gone completely insane. And so I was sick in March, so who knows what it was, but
I was praying for you. I
it
actually
was,
had like a
thank
little thing
you.
for you. Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
it must have worked because, I mean, it wasn't bad, but because it was, during, right at the beginning of the pandemic, like nobody knew what was going to happen, so like if I got sick now, I wouldn't be as scared, but at the time, like I was scared. And like, it's really weird because my symptoms weren't terrible. But the fatigue was so awful for weeks. Anyway, but all fine now. And after that, I was like, I've been exercising literally every single day. I have this friend who curates a workout video for us every day at 8:30 a.m. And we work out every day. I am in better shape now than I have ever been.
That's funny. I think there are a lot of people who are going to end up that way because there are so many fitness exercise classes that are being given for free, especially now that the gyms are open. It seems like that people can do. So exercise is good, releasing the endorphins,
Yeah.
and you're rejuvenating and getting the oxygen in. I am sorry to hear that you went through that experience and the fatigue, and I imagine it was terrifying, especially because the data initially was just so overwhelming.
Yeah. And contradictory sometimes. So anyway, I just did what I could at that time. I mean, clearly, we're now at 110,000 deaths in the last 3 months. And so I feel very grateful that it just could have been so much worse in so many different ways. But I'm thinking about, you were saying, people having more time to think. I mean, up until the quarantine, I certainly was, yeah, I mean, I try to be thoughtful, but like, I just fill my time every second, just going, doing. So that part has been awesome. Like just to like have all this time to think about stuff. I feel so lucky that I can have time and that I mean, I know that so many people are like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, I have to go stock the grocery store shelves, and I'm an essential worker. So I don't know. I just feel very lucky that I have the ability to stay in my home and have time and have food and all the things available to me. So I'm trying to like not take that for granted and to really use that time to really process and think about like, what can I be doing?
Awesome. What do you love?
Well, I do have this extremely cute cat sitting on my lap right now.
Hey, kitty.
Frankie, say hi to Aunt Arlene.
Cute. Aw.
um, oh, that's such a good question. That is such a good question. So many things are popping into my head. I don't know where to begin. I feel a lot of love for so many things and people right now. I really do. Like, I haven't been able to go out and protest as much as I would have liked this week, but I did go out yesterday for a couple hours and I met up with a bunch of people over at the White House, and then we marched over to the Lincoln Memorial. And there are like maybe, I'd say, I'm not good at estimating how many people. I'd say 500 or 600 people were there. It was awesome. Like, people were it just felt so purposeful in a way that I've been to like a lot of protests in the last 3 years. That one just felt different in the sense that it didn't feel like protests for show or for performing for other people. I'm sure there's some element of that. There always is, but it felt like, no, people really freaking care and they're really caring, and it's not going to end next week. Like, they're going to keep, I don't know, this is the optimist in me. I think people are really going to keep showing up for this.
I think you're right. I think people have changed. I think in this time of being shuttered, in this time of angst, people have shifted. I think priorities have changed. What's really important? Is it important to have Louboutins, or is it important for me to love that others have something to put on? You know what I mean? It's like that type of thought process has come into being.
Mhm.
And you're awesome for throwing. I think I remember I talked to you before when I was giving away a lot of stuff, and I believe in giving away things. I donate often, and you donate quite a bit. What's that about for you?
Well, I mean, I don't have a really strong, I like my stuff. I mean, like, I like art, you know, I like, you do too, I see.
I painted these actually.
You did? Those are awesome. I was actually going to ask you about those. Wow.
But
Cool.
I paint. Well, we'll talk about that
Yeah,
another time. Go ahead.
yeah,
Actually, I made this one. I will show you this one.
yeah.
It's 12 by 16, but I made it for today for the orange and the violence. So, and no violence and protest. So I did my protest through art.
That's awesome. I
Thank you.
like that. I like that.
Go ahead. So,
I don't know why I do it. Actually. I'm just like, take everything. I don't know. I don't have a real attachment to money. Like, okay, but this, see, I feel like I'm filled with contradictions because I was,
aren't we all?
yes, one of the calls on one of my Zooms this week, I was talking about how much I love capitalism, but I think I can see that got misconstrued. What I really like is opportunity, but like I recognize that not everybody has the same opportunities, and so I want to I want to help create more opportunities for people. And so I have I don't know, like I have, like you said, I have a platform. I have the ability to create those opportunities. So I just want to, I want to be part of the creation process for that. But it has really brought up a lot, like this, we could talk for so long, like all the things we talked about, like every conversation this week, every cross-political Zoom that I organized this week, just something different came up each time. Like this one where we talked about capitalism and what that meant, and the idealism of capitalism, and how the idealism of it is not wrong. But it's never done correctly. It has never been done in a way that doesn't hurt somebody. And maybe it's not possible to do without hurting others. That, you know, it is a zero-sum game at some level. So I've been thinking a lot about that, because part of me has had a lot of opportunity in my life. And so I'm like, you know, part of me is like, but we have to create those same opportunities for everybody. It's like, maybe that's not possible, you know? So I was really appreciative that somebody questioned this idealism in me of like wanting to share all these opportunities with everyone. Maybe that's not possible in this construct.
I don't know. There are different forms of capitalism. I think capitalism needs to evolve.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when it evolves, then it can be embraced by others. And I do believe in different types of currency. Not everything is like printed. You know, conversation is currency, right? Helping someone in need, that's currency. And that is a form of capitalism in a way, you know, because that is helping another person. So I used to have issues with money, especially because I came out of that large firm life, and I was not very pleased that I subjected myself to the large firm life, because there was a time where I'd gotten like a little bit ill and I was working and I was like, oh wow, I'm here. I really don't like it, but I want this health insurance. It's really good, you know, and I thought about it and I said, you know, I had this rejection for money, and it's taken me time. Like, I'm not big on money. Money is important. It's a tool. So I embrace it. I embrace, as you said, the opportunity that capitalism provides. You know, it allows me to have different experiences. Like last year, I went and lived in New Zealand for like 36 days.
Yeah.
And yeah, I did. I
Oh,
loved it.
cool.
I was planting trees and I was there. And I had such a transformational experience, you know.
Yeah.
I hung out with the Maori people. I did all kinds of stuff, but it was transformational. And having those experiences give me depth, I feel, as a person. So I can't say, oh, I'm all against money. You need it, to do things. But I do believe we need to visit the way in which we handle money and the way that currency is valued. We learned about that from essential workers.
Mm-hmm.
We learned about that parents with kids that have to be homeschooled. I'm not laughing at the parents, please don't get mad. But they learned the value of a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And they learned, wow, maybe if you play basketball, you can make a lot of money, but maybe a teacher should be making more money than that because of the value that is offered.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm not down with capitalism. It's the exploitation of people through capitalism that I'm down with.
Yeah, I mean, the way
on.
yeah, that I do not like. Yeah, I mean, what we have right now that is called capitalism is not what this is not. This is like an oligarchy or something, a kleptocracy. This is not capitalism. What
No,
we're experiencing right now. So that I think that's right. We need to evolve from whatever this is to something else that is not unfettered theft, corporate cronyism. So yeah, when I say I love capitalism, I'm not talking about this, what we got.
Exactly. I knew you didn't mean that because my heart's like, my register is like, no, that's not Philippa. So we've talked a lot, and I know you're busy, and I appreciate that you've carved the time. Is there something that you want to give as a takeaway that you haven't been asked, or something that you want people to know about who you are, why you are, and what you do?
Oh man, you are asking the hard questions. That's a harder question than it sounds like.
I'm a lawyer still, I'm sorry. But not for money, not for money. That scarring experience. I'm not a lawyer for money. I volunteer, but anyway, go ahead.
Well, that was good of you because I can't even do that anymore. I was so scarred that I can't even.
Yeah, no, I got you.
Yeah. Well, two things popped into my head. So can I say two things?
Yes, you can. I'm just trying to be respectful of your time. Go
Oh,
ahead.
you. No, this is so great. Well, I have this little rant that I've been thinking about all week that I that I bring up all the time because I'm so mad about the polarization in our country, about the destruction of democracy, and polarization is certainly destroying our democracy. And so I have coined a new term. My new term is the polarization industrial complex. And my feeling is that there are many parties in our country that benefit from polarization, and they are distributing a narrative that says we are so polarized and everybody hates each other. And I anecdotally reject that. That has not been my experience in the past year of talking to many Americans around the country. People want to talk to each other and they are exhausted by this narrative, and we have to change the narrative. And so I think that's maybe my driving force right now, is we've got to change that narrative or else we are destroying our democracy. And I do like living in America, and I do like living in a democracy. So I really would rather not have that go away. I like it here. And I like to travel all over the world, but I always love coming back here. I know what I have here is something I could not have anywhere else. So that's one thing. But the other thing I've been really thinking about too is nuance. Like, it's related to this polarization conversation, but I'm going to call it contradiction. Like, I feel filled with contradictions, but really it's not contradictions, it's nuance. Like, people are so uninteresting to me when they're very strident about their beliefs. I find that so boring. I find the people who can express all of their contradictions and embrace that's so interesting to me. And so I hope that's how I think that's how I am, and that I want to share all the contradictions in me and not be called out for it all the time and canceled for it. It's boring to be canceling. So that's a thing that I'm really going to start trying to lean into more. I've been afraid to express things. I'm going to try to be less afraid to express the nuances in the things that I believe and that I stand for.
I love you more. No, I mean, I kind of find I don't want to say, like, it sounds kind of arrogant, but I feel even more confident, like, I mean, in having asked you to do this, but in associating with you, because we don't normally get to have as much of a concentrated conversation because we're usually speaking around an event, and you're just as awesome as I thought that you would be. So I'm really,
Oh,
really, really pleased.
well, and I appreciate you saying that. And that's another thing I've been thinking about. Like, we need to say those things to each other. Like, you're right. We never talked this way, but we've like bumped into each other all these years, like years. Yeah. Like, this is what I'm talking about. We need to have these kind of conversations about things that matter and not about these silly, superficial things. I've been getting very annoyed with superficial conversations more so than ever lately. So I am so happy you're doing this. This is awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You brought up something that I feel I would be wrong if I don't address it with you. Art is fear. What is that about?
Well, art is about grappling with your fear. That's what it's really about. It's about grappling with fear, because we are all driven by our fears and everything, politics, all of it. And so for me, art is about how we grapple with a fear.
That's impressive. For those who are going to be tuning into this podcast, I want to say that Philippa writes a blog and it's called Art is Fear. And when I first saw it, I was like, wait a minute, what? Art is fear? I didn't understand it, but it chronicles her experiences, and it's moving, it's eye-opening, and it makes you think, it's reflective. So I appreciate that blog that you do. Now, one thing that I did want to say in terms of being driven by fear, for me, I'm not driven by fear. I'm driven by love, because I found that when I allowed my fear to drive me, it overwhelmed me and I got anxious. Like, I had gotten attacked, like, by this random bus driver after helping my uncle in New York. And it's the same day I coordinated for the woman who'd gotten, ironically, shot in the eye with a pellet at Standing Rock. I coordinated for her, Susie Despa. I coordinated for her to get eye surgery with my brother. He's a retina surgeon, and he did her surgery for free. He was like, if you find her, I'll operate on her for free. So I was like, okay.
Wow.
I'm like finding the tribe. I'm like finding her, coordinating. And that same day after I coordinated with that, and I went to New York to help my uncle, I came back on a bus and got attacked by this bus driver. And I was moving slowly.
Verbally attacked or physically?
Like physically attacked. It wasn't just verbal. It was a physical attack. He was crazy. And it was frightening. I started to get like this anxious type feeling that I never had before. And the doctor was like, oh, you had a panic attack. And I was like, a panic attack? So at the time I had cats, and I grabbed my cat and I said, I love you. And I started to call out everything that I loved, and my fear went away. And I never stayed in that fear state like after that. And I thought about a Bible scripture, and it says, perfect love casts out fear. And so it made sense to me. I didn't know at the time, when I was focusing on love, that that is actually a true way to conquer fear. And I think love actually destroys the fears and destroys the things that we fear.
Yeah. Yep. I could not agree with you more.
And I see a kitty tail there.
Yep.
Frankie is his name?
Franklin.
He's like, yeah, that's me. Frankly, thank you for sharing you're adopting, or you're...
What's that?
Is he are you adopting and homing him like foster, or is he yours adopted?
Oh, well, I was fostering him, air quotes, but I mean, of course, this woman who like asked me to foster, she knew I was going to keep the cat. all knew what was happening here.
Well, I think that Frankie scored, and so did you. Thank you,
Yes.
Wonder Woman.
Thank you. I love talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have to talk again.
Yeah, totally.
Be well. Take
Bye.
care. Bye. So what'd you think of Philippa? I absolutely adore this Wonder Woman connector who has the vision and the courage to have conversation with people in a quest for human connection, whether it's that she's experiencing it or she's creating it for others. It's important to remember that we are all the same, even though we are all so different. We addressed a lot of issues in this episode, and I hope that you walked away with something that stuck with you as much as it stuck with me. But most importantly, I would encourage you to take a look at your love vibration. Take a look at how you are elevating yourself and others. I think that that's really what the issue is. If we can love ourselves, we can love others. And then Philippa made a really great point that I hadn't really considered, which was to know ourselves. And that might be the challenge. Maybe this time of quiet that we've had has provided some of you with that opportunity. Next time on God and Matter, our guest will be Tim Ellis. Tim is a musician and he has a band called International Freak Machine. He also does solo work, and Tim and I worked together to create a song called Choose Love. That song seems very appropriate now, although I created it for my children's book, The Truth About Humpty Dumpty. It is about love putting the pieces back together again. And it's my hope that truly love will put the pieces back together on our earth. Thank you so much for listening. God and Matter is produced by Arlene Speaks Media, LLC, and distributed by Castbox.fm and available on YouTube.com. For more information about God and Matter, please visit our website, godandmatter.com, and do consider subscribing. It helps.